It's time to cut the fret slots. They're already marked out, and now we've got to cut them. And I always find the problem is if you just get a fret saw and just cut them, it's really easy to get it wrong, to get the angle slightly out, and they're quite hard to see, and you've got to get them accurately. So what I do is just make this little jig up, and really it's just 2 pieces of wood glue gunned onto a piece of wood so that this thing fits in it quite snugly. And then another piece of wood, the same thing that's in front of it, this goes onto it, and it will give you a nice square, as long as you're careful when you glue these on, a nice square thing which you can then start the saws off. And what I do is I just do a fairly shallow cut just as a guide, so that I can then go through them each one at a time, put a guide on the saw for depth, and we've got it, because then once they're started off it's easy then. So done a few of these, done a couple there. I'll just show you, move on to the next one. So we line it up like that, and holding it in place, I can then just saw across. Like that. And there's the next one. Okay, I can carry on, I've done 3 there already. I can carry on all the way up the deck. Now obviously I'm using my square edge that's marked here against here to make sure I've got them square against that edge. Of course, while you're doing this, there's no reason you can't make a fancier jig and put some bump stops on that to give you a depth as well. You could maybe have one in front with a bump stop on it so that you get an exact depth. I can't be bothered, but there we are. Now as I'm going here, collecting all the dust, I'm just tapping it on here. I'm going to sweep that up later, because this stuff is really useful for later stages for hiding mistakes. Now what I like to do is take these little pots like you get from puddingses, and you can then collect up this sawdust that we've just made, like that, and then drop it into these pots. And I've always got a supply when needed. What I like to do then is to put that on the shelf and then knock it over in about a week's time and lose it all. Once they're all marked out, what I like to do is put a little piece of wood. You can bolt it along the blade. You can buy the actual thing, you can buy a proper saw with the thing on it, and I've just bolted in through the holes like that. But that's got the depth set, and that'll let me go down to the depth. So I'll take one of these, I'll take one at random. And really, you just need to saw until such time as this bottoms out, and that'll give you the depth. In this case it's 2.5 mil. And go all the way along and cut those to the right depth. And now it's time to think about putting on the decoration. So here we go, the mother of pearl inlays. Now I've never done anything like this before. All the guitars I've made before have had dots, and they're easy. You just drill a hole and pop in a dot. These are much more interesting, because what I'm going to have to do is first of all mark these out really accurately, and then I'm going to have to dig a hole that deep in the fretboard just at the right point to put them in. And to make matters worse, the Back to the Future one has got these split ones, so they're not just standard blocks like on a normal guitar. Oh no, got to be these split ones. And the Back to the Future guitar itself has a single one for the 12th fret, which apparently is quite rare. But when I look at these, I join them up, they're that one's going to be too short, so I'm going to have to find a way of extending that. I'm going to find a bit of mother of pearl somewhere and extend that, or find a whole piece of mother of pearl and cut it out to be the right size. So that'd be a challenge all on its own. Okay, that's them put in place, and I've checked on the video to make sure that they're in the right place. These are obvious, but they start to get different as you come down here. It starts to be not quite sure which one's which. So they're in the right place. The next thing I need to do is figure out exactly where they need to go. Also, these things came attached to a card, and I've got a bit of card stuck on the back of them, so I need to clean that off. I'll probably use a little bit of scraper or some sandpaper, probably some sandpaper on the bench, and just clean that off so that they're nice and flat on the back, and I'll have at least some chance of being able to inlay them without them wobbling all over the place. So that's the next job. And for cleaning the backs of these, what I found, if you take a standing knife blade, in fact run it along a piece of metal, so I run it along the table of my drill press, it gives you a little burnish on the end, a bit like a scraper, and then that you can use just to scrape off the glue and stuff that's left on the back of these. And that's cleaning up quite well. So I've got like 18 of these to do. So the next thing to do is mark on the fretboard where they're going to go. But first of all, I want to take these off, but I want to do it in such a way that I can keep the order and to not lose them all. So what I'm going to do is I'm taking them off here and I'm putting them onto a piece of tape. Now that's going to be useful anyway later on, and I'll show you why. I'm taking them all off, putting them onto this upturned tape. So this is just masking tape, sticking them on, and that way I'm not going to lose any. And I'm doing it in order so I can find the right ones again. And I want to make sure that they are completely covered by the tape as well. It's not very easy because they get shorter and fatter, but they also get longer. So these ones are getting close to the extent of the tape now. I might put these ones lengthways. Don't want to waste the tape after all. Right, that's all of them safely on some tape. And I can now leave that happy in the knowledge that none of them are going to wander off. Now this fretboard is not parallel. We have one straight edge that I measured and flattened. The other one's flat, but it's not necessarily at right angles to it. So we're going to use this marked one, and I marked it, remember. So that's going to be my main face. So we can measure across here and we can get an idea of what the thickness is. But in fact, yeah, it's a different thickness at that end. So let's take that as the thickness to start with. And what I'm going to do is measure that, and then I'm going to use that to half, and then I can draw in my centre line. It won't be in the centre, it'll be in the centre relative to this, and then I'll be, if I wanted to trim the other edge off to get the centre, but I don't need to do that. I just need to mark what is going to be the centre line. So that's giving me 76 millimeters. So half that, 35, 38 millimeters should be halfway. So I can set this up to 38 millimeters. The next thing I'm going to do, take my white pencil, I'm going to mark each fret just with a little X where there's going to be a marker. So I've got 3rd, 5th, 7th, 9th, and then 12th. I'll mark that with 2, and then there's another double step, and it singles from there on in until we get to there. So that's each one that's going to have a marker, and that'll stop me from accidentally putting them in the wrong place. And the other thing I've done with my white pencil, I've just put a little bit onto the mark and rubbed it out, so I get a little bit of the white into that mark just on each one of these, next to each one of these marks. So I'll get a little tiny dot which gives me an idea where that centre line is, because it's not all that easy to see. Now the fretboard that itself is marked out, I'm going to concentrate on these things next. And what I've found, because there's 2 of them for each one with a gap in the middle, I need to figure out what the gap's going to be. So looking up online, it looks like a 2mm gap is what they normally have. So that looks pretty much that. So what I've done is stuck a piece of sticky tape onto a ruler like this. And I've stuck the 2 things, and because they're touching the ruler, I can be sure that they're both square to each other. And then I've measured the gap as 2mm along the ruler and stuck them on. So that looks smaller than the gap on the film. So what I'm going to do is compare that to how it looks on the film. I've also done one with a slightly bigger gap. This is the far end, so the two extremes if you like. So I'm going to compare them both to some pictures and see which one I think is the closest. So that's 3mm and that's 2mm. So now I'm back from checking on the film. Definitely looks like a bigger gap. Now it's possible that it's just the way the film is showing it and sort of popping the white out, but it looks like a bigger gap, so I'm going to do the 3mm rather than the 2mm. And there we are. I've set it up and balanced it against here, so I can now peel these end ones off the ruler, and in theory those should be nicely lined up. So I'm going to take these over to the cutting board and cut that out. So with a very sharp knife and my best glasses, I'm just going to cut the tape away so that I'm ending up with just the small bit that's around the actual things. So another one here. There we go, and then across the bottom. There we are. That one is now set up, it's all square and flat, and I can now apply that to the fretboard. I'm going to carry on now and do that to all the rest. Here's a close-up of the way I'm going to use to fit these things in place. So I've got, because I've left this all square, I've got a square edge here as marked, so I can now put a square against that to make sure that these are lined up squarely. Now getting them right in this direction is interesting as well, because they're strange. They're not really, well, they're symmetrical, but they're a funny shape. And you can see the center line that I've got here, and the center line basically has to cross a little way. So what I've done is measured the distance from here, the center line, to the point of both edges. And you can see I've made a little pencil mark there on both sides. You can just about make out that bottom one. So that'll tell me it's in the right direction in this way. I know it's square from here, and then by the power of using my calculator, I know what this distance is. Well, actually it's this distance. I know I can measure how wide this is, and that tells me what the gap is, and the gap is about 7.5mm. So half of that is 3.75, and so that gap, when I measure it, has to be 3.75. So I can measure it with that, and if that's 3.75, that will be on the other side, and that means it's centralized that way. Lined up with the pencil marks, it's centralized this way. And now it's a bit of a leap of faith, because I'm going to super glue these down using the tape. I'm not going to super glue the actual mother of pearl onto the wood. I'm going to super glue the tape onto the wood. So I know I'm going to dig away the wood anyway if it makes a mess, and the tape will just come off. So first of all, I'll practice. Can I take that off and then put it back on again quickly and easily before it dries? Okay, looks like I can. So let's flip it over. Add a bit of super glue to the backs, just a little stripe on either side. And without gluing myself to it, I will put this in place. So against the ruler, against there, press it down, and hopefully that will glue. Okay, so we take away the square, and that is glued in place. Excellent. Okay. Once it's there, I can double check. That's square. That's square. And then I can do the measurements. Measures that side. Measures that side. Meets the mark, meets the mark. So that looks like it's ready. Now that that's stuck, I'm going to do the same all the way down. It's going to be a little bit painstaking, but I'm going to glue them all in place. So it's taken ages, but there we are. All of the markers are now super glued in place, just gently super glued, not with masses, and they're all ready for the next stage. So there we are, that's the inlays marked out, stuck on, and the fret slots cut. So the next job is to start digging those holes, but I'm going to wait for that till next time. So hope you enjoyed it, hope it was useful. If you liked it, give me a like and feel free to press subscribe. Maybe I'll see you next time.